let's talk about agents. Don't worry, not your real estate agents, but something more cooler than that, and which is the buzzword for the whole 2025, the AI agents. In our next session, we have Patrick. Patrick is Google developer. Oops. Patrick is a Google developer expert in machine learning and AI, and he's also leading the AI engineering team at IAG. In today's session, Patrick will show us how to build AI agent from ground using Google's agent development kit. So a big round of applause for Patrick.
So thank you so much for the introduction, Yubi. My name is Patrick. I am a Google developer expert in AI and machine learning and cloud, and I'm currently leading AI engineering at IAG. I'm really excited to be with you actually today because I want to talk about something that I'm really, really passionate about. And that is agents, how to build AI agents, and more importantly, how to do that with ADK, which is the easiest way for you to get started and start building applications. So what we're going to do in this session is we're going to cover the core concepts of ADK, which stands for Agent Development Kit, by the way. It's architecture, and after that, we'll jump into a deep dive demo, and I'll show you how to put it all in practice by building a multi-agent application, which is going to be an assistant for an insurance company. So we'll see how we can do that, and we'll also see how we can test our agent in production. Sounds good? Cool. Okay, let's get started. Let's jump right in. So quick refresher about ADK, or if you haven't heard about this before, and the reason why we're talking about it today. Well, first of all, it's open source. And I don't think I need to say anything more than that. We all love open source. It's fantastic. And it's great to see that ADK is open as well. It allows us to create a multi-agent architecture straight out of the box. So you can build modular and scalable applications using ADK. It also has a very flexible model integration. It is optimized for Gemini, and it is optimized for Google Cloud, but it is model agnostic, which means that if you're using another model into your production, if you're using Claude or anything else, great, it will still work with ADK, and you can use it as a tool. It also supports a lot of different integrations with other tools as well. So it's not really very closed. It's quite open, which is great. Now, it also provides a rich ecosystem of tools, right? You have straight from Google tools that allow you to do things out of the box. You have things like, like the Google Gemini search that is available to you, and multiple extensions that allow you to connect to your APIs within Google Cloud. We will see that actually in the demo. And also the ability to connect to custom integrations. So if you're using other systems like ServiceNow or any other SaaS system into your organization, you can do that through the connections that are built in. And of course, you can do that through an IDE. You have an environment where as a developer, you can go in and kind of like try an experiment and start building all those things. And it is enterprise ready, right? I know it's relatively quite new still, still in Devfest, but definitely proven, and you can use it in an enterprise environment. And then, of course, it also supports A2A frameworks if you want to integrate with different agents. Now, in all fairness, I probably need to say where ADK stands. Like when you're talking about building agents in the Google ecosystem, you have a few options, right? One of them is Agent Space, which is almost like a no-code tool where it allows you to orchestrate, build them, and set them up. And then, of course, you can build conversational agents using something like Dialogflow. Where ADK comes to play is when we want to build something of our own. We're not using something that's readily available. You want to do that, and its main audience is developers. For the developers in the room, and it's kind of like I'll talk a little bit about it before, but it sits around all other custom tools. Now I hear this question a lot, all the time actually. Why should I use ADK and not use another framework? And it's a valid question. It's a good question. But when we think about building AI applications, there's different levels of abstraction. To be fair, you can start from something like build your own. You can make calls, you can write your own code, make API calls directly to the model. Great, you have a lot of flexibility, but that's complex and a bit difficult to manage, right? And then, of course, we have quite a few low-level frameworks that can do that for us. LangChain commands and LangFlow that allow you to kind of like do this. But the difference with ADK is that while these frameworks allow us to do interaction with models, ADK is actually built to help us do the next evolution, which is build agents and do agentic AI. And not only that, it actually provides the highest level of abstraction. So you're very far removed from the low-level implementation code that you would need if you were using any of those other frameworks. Now, we talk about agents, right? Obviously we don't mean like ChangeSpot or anything like this, right? Talking about agents, there's three different types. One of them is LLM agents. Well, these agents use large language models like Gemini, right, as their brains, and then they can do everything. They can reason, plan, collaborate to achieve goals, like even complex tasks. But all you're really using is just one large language model. But you're not restricted to this. We actually have workflow agents, right? These agents don't rely on an LLM to make decisions at all. You can build your own custom sub-agents. So they control the execution and they control everything that goes within to sub-agent. Now, these come in three different kind of like obviously the names suggest here. They can do things, they can run through the agent in a sequence, right? When you execute the one task or your workflow after the other. You can do this in parallel by coordinating concurrent execution of multiple workflows and subtasks, and in a loop. But also you have the ability to build custom flows by yourself. And all this is actually supported on top of ADK. You can even turn your own functions basically into agents and use them within ADK itself. Now let's start with the easiest, the large language model agents. Just like in traditional software development, there are common architectural patterns for building with AI agents as well, right? The simplest pattern is a single model architecture. Here, one LLM, usually a large language model like Gemini, handles every part of the task, right? Quite simple to implement. But you can also do things in sequential order or a pipeline. You chain multiple specialized agents together, and the output of one agent then becomes the input to the next one. As a matter of fact, actually, we will see that into our own demo, because this is the implementation that I've tried to do. And then, of course, you have a parallel pattern, which is quite interesting. We can pretty much send the same task to a lot of different agents at the same time, and then collate back the answer, the results, and filter them out. I think, like I've been asked many times, what's the use case for this? Why would you do that? And I think that that's quite important and quite nice when you're doing a lot of experimentation or exploration. Like if you were building on those requirements, you could have every sub-agent have a different personality, if you like, or a different task. And then, like by executing them all in parallel, then you come back with the result and you figure out what's the best way to do it. And then the last one, which is a little bit more complicating, which is the hierarchical routing. And basically, this is a pattern where it routes to an agent based on intent, right? It's quite powerful because I guess like it's resource efficient, it's quite scalable. You don't have to run across multiple agents at the same time. But it also has a drawback because if the intent is not recognized properly, you may find yourself like executing the wrong agent. Let's bring it back to ADK. Now, the fundamental building block of the ADK is the base agent. Now, you define an agent by using key properties, right? A unique name, the model name that powers it, and more importantly, the instruction, right? Which is the prompting that we give to the agent in order to build it. It tells it who it is, essentially, what it can do, what it should do, and then we can give it tools to connect it to the world, essentially other APIs or other systems, and sub-agents if you want to delegate tasks. Again, we're going to actually see that into our own demo. Now, as you can see in the slide, agents are not really limited to just text, right? They can take a wide variety of inputs like audio, video, structural and unstructured data, and they can take actions by connecting to almost any point. You can have REST APIs, gRPC, or even custom protocols of your own, including A2A. Now, the ADK, the advantage with the ADK is that it actually makes it very easy for us to connect to those tools. It has, as I mentioned before, like, built-in tools, to connect out of the box, essentially with almost like, well, everything within the Google Cloud ecosystem, to be fair. And we'll see how we're going to do that, but also, as I said, with other integrations. Now, what I find really interesting is ADK's approach to context, which is important, for the developers in the room. How hard it is actually to manage that. And the first thing that we have within ADK is a session, right? A session essentially represents a single ongoing interaction between the user and the agent. It encapsulates the entire sequence of events and of inputs and outputs and responses that we have, within the interaction. And it is important because it provides continuity through and through. Now, obviously, we also have state, that's managed automatically for us. And state essentially stores key value data that is relevant only to the current interaction, and it's updated every time a new interaction comes in via triggers. Now, an agent that doesn't remember anything isn't very useful. Right? So to have a real conversation with an agent, like on a complete, at least multi-step conversation with an agent, you need memory, right? Now, by default, this memory is short-term and is stored in memory. Sorry, that sounds a little bit funny, but essentially it's stored in memory for the duration of the session. But ADK also allows you to build long-term memory by storing all the information into a database, like those you can find in Vertex AI. Actions or interface to agents can also, be called to accomplish tasks, and we'll see those in the demo as well. Now, as a final thing, before we jump into our demo, ADK is also highly extensible through callbacks. Right? These are hooks that you inject custom code at critical points, like within the agent lifecycle. You can use them for logging, monitoring, validating inputs, or even streaming intermediate results to a UI. This gives you a powerful way, basically, to get control of your interaction between those agents. And with that, because I did promise that I'm not going to go into too much theory, let's go into our demo. So what we're going to do for demo? Well, we're going to build a multi-agent virtual assistant for an auto insurance company that can manage memberships. So essentially, it can register new members. It can handle claims. It can provide roadside assistance, including potentially towing services. And it can even find rewards for our members nearby. Now, the tools that we talked about, like before into our agent, are provided by custom APIs. Now, this specification of the APIs are imported to API Hub. Who here has used API Hub or APG? No? Okay, so essentially, like, it's pretty much Google's kind of like integrated gateway, if you like, for managing APIs and services and exposing them. So we're going to essentially use Google's APG and API Hub to deploy our APIs, and then these will let our agents, like, easily, turn them into almost like, like a catalog for us that they can use. So the sample implementation here is going to be literally nothing crazy. I'm just going to return mock data. So let's go to have a look a bit of code. And I know I'm progressing actually quite fast, which is a good thing, I guess. But hopefully it will give us enough time to tinker around and have questions. So let's look at our code a little bit. All I have here is pretty much a proxy definition to tell you what we're going to be deploying into our API side of things. So essentially, we're going to have an endpoint that can list rewards, an endpoint that can list tows or create tows, and like pretty much the whole CRUD information into tows. The same thing for our members, and the same information, I guess, for claims. Now, if we look at the for example, what we're actually going to do when we create a claim. As I mentioned before, here we're using Apigee and Gemini together to create back a JSON response that builds content dynamically, as you can see here. So for example, like what will happen here in this endpoint, we'll take the input from the user, and then we're going to use Gemini, send back a response to Gemini to generate a random ID. And I sign it, and then eventually we're going to send it back as a JSON response, which I think is quite smart, because if you're ever doing testing or you're building mocks, you don't actually have to go through a full implementation. This is a fantastic approach to do that. So I'm not going to go into more details about the API, but essentially it's the traditional standard API where you can actually do requests. You can pretend that this is your API or whatever case you have, and it's following a standard REST interface in this case. Now, let's jump into our agent and see how we can do that with ADK. How much code do you think we have here? Thank you. Not a lot. That's the point. That's how I want to explain how easy it actually is. So let's look at those tools. So the first thing that we obviously cannot do is pass in some configuration, obviously, where our project is going to run and how it's going to be deployed. But then more importantly, in order for me to create a tool that the agent is going to use to talk to my API, all I really have to do is this section here. So essentially, I define that I'm going to use an API through the API Hub toolset, which is, as I said, the built-in tool that is provided by the ADK, essentially by Google. So, and then I give it a name. I provide the description for that endpoint. I give it the endpoint, of course, for the interaction. And the rest is authentication. As you can see, I don't have to define anything else here, right? It happens literally almost automatically for me by using the API Hub tool. Don't have to explain what the API does. I don't have to explain any of the tools. And I do that the exact same way for all the other 3 or 4 endpoints. Now let's go into actually implementing the agent that's going to do all this. If we switch into our agent, so I should have started from the top. I'm actually going to, let's go through, like what we discussed a little bit about before. So let's create a roadside agent, right? We give it a name, as we mentioned before. We define the model that we're going to use. In this case, I'm using Gemini 2.5 Flash, but it could be any other model that you wanted to use. And then I provide the description for what the agent actually does, which is provide roadside assistance, right, including towing services. And then, as I said before, the most important thing, actually, let me maximize that screen a little bit more. The most important thing is the instructions. And all these are prompts, literally, that we give to Gemini 2.5 in order to manage the interaction. And as you can see here, there's no real other logic that I'm building here in order to do this whole thing. Literally, I'm just like instructions. Say, dispatch a service for towing, jump starting, refueling, all this information. And then, of course, I provide steps for the agent to do, which is, like, don't greet the user, ask if they need help, be helpful, ask for the location, gather all the information that you need. And then, of course, like I kind of like say, you can use the roadside assistance API as a tool in order to do the work. And I do that for all my other sub-agents, right? I create one agent for, in this occasion, for member registration, another agent for handling claims, and one more agent to do rewards. Now, quite straightforward, right? Quite simple. Essentially, all the work happens mostly in defining the prompting. So let's try and bring it all together now. We're going to create a main agent, the root agent. And the root agent is going to be responsible for coordinating the work, between the sub-agents and sending the request to that, right? So obviously we give it a name, which is a root agent, and equally we provided an instruction. Now the instructions here are a little bit more elaborate, right? Because we want to provide initial steps, when to transfer the task into any of the sub-agents, how to handle things when we get back a response from an agent, and then of course manage the conversation and handle any errors, right? And then one of the important things, as I said, is to actually do not attempt to handle specialized requests yourself. Always delegate to the sub-agent in order to do that. And then of course I define which sub-agents the root agent has available and which tools they're available to do that. And of course, like the model that's going to do all the work. So as you can see so far, even as an engineer, all I really had to do is pretty much be thorough in my prompting and instructions on the agent how to do, because all the heavy lifting is being done by Gemini itself, not necessarily by building deterministic things myself. So let's go out and run it. So when we have an agent, and that's all really, like we just literally build, like right here, an agent that has 4 different sub agents, and it will use them all sequentially, the one after the other. So simple. And I guess like we have a few ways to run it when we build it. I can run it locally on my device right here in the command prompt, but I don't think that is very useful. ADK has a web interface where we can do our development and debugging, and it's actually much more intuitive. So let me try and do that. Let me try and spin it. It will run locally on my device as well, but it will communicate with the APIs in Google Cloud through my credentials here. So I'll just go ADK web. All right, and it's running into my local browser. Let's see if I can find that. You can see my screen, hopefully. No. All right, let me stop sharing and I'll share again. How about that? Great, awesome. Right, now, here's a web interface where we can actually test our agent. So we're gonna go out and select it here, which is an auto insurance agent, and we'll just kick it off. Fingers crossed. All sacrifices to the demo gods. Fire it away. Hey, agent. I should have stolen all the disclaimers that Katie put. Where's Katie? So, how's everyone going while we wait for I should have warmed up the API before I jump into the screen. But essentially, after this, hey, hello, there we go. We have our first response from our API. So we get greeted basically, like as we said in the instructions, to say, hi, how can I help you? Can I have your member ID? Well, I'm not a member, so I just want to sign up. And I'll be lazy. I'll just put it short. No need to be polite with my agent. So, and as you can see now, it's already kind of like, because obviously this is our development interface, right? It's telling me that it's actually transferring to an agent, and it has transferred to an agent. If I do that, I get a nice visual. Sorry, the transfer. Here we go. Get a really nice visual that tells me all the possible paths that it actually could have taken, and it tells me from the root agent now I'm in the membership agent, so it has redirected me quite well. And of course, like in that interface, I can also see have a trace of all the things that have happened, and within that trace, I can see information about all those calls. So let's get started, right? It says, thank you for choosing or being a member. Let's just sign up. So why not? Great, like let's give full name, email address, phone number. Okay, let's start with something short. I don't even want to spell my entire last name. And I'm going to try and trick you a little bit. I'm not going to give you any of the other information. Right. But, it's quite smart enough to say, okay, I need your email address, phone number to complete this. Now, I'm not going to give everyone my email address here. And then what we also need, I'm not going to give everyone my phone number, maybe the first 3 digits. And what else do we need? An address, I don't know, maybe my work address. You can send spam there. And okay, what else do we need? We need city, state, and zip code. I'll try and be a bit tricky as well. I'll just go Melbourne, and I'll reverse the last 2. I'll say 3,000 Vic. Let's see. I'm not going to give it in order that it asked. But it's quite smart. It can actually understand that it says all this information correct. Yes. Yes, it is. Now, as you can see, like this interaction obviously is happening within the membership. It has created a member. Now, okay, demo guy's a little bit not graceful to me. I should have seen the response back from the main agent, so I'll just nudge it a little bit. Right, here we go. It pretty much come back and says, created your membership. Everything is pretty much done. And again, by going there, we can actually see all the logic, and here we reverted back into the root one. Now, what can I help you with? And I say, I have broken down. Now it will transfer to agent, and what it will do is it knows that the breakdown is a tow, like a roadside assistance service, and it will just come back and say, like we get back the response from the towing agent, like the roadside assistant agent now, and say, could you please give me your location? I need to know what has happened. I say, okay, I need a tow. I'm at the REA building. Let's try that. Here's the action to create a tow. Yeah, I need to fix my prompting. This should have given me back the response. Right, here we go. Found the company nearby. It's been completed. Is there anything else I can help you with? And we can keep on having fun and asking it to do some weird stuff for us. But in the meantime, I think like maybe good time for me. I'm not sure how we're going with time, but maybe take a little bit of a break, and I'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. I hope this was kind of clear of how easy it is to build and how how easy to interact with. Any questions?
Questions?
Nice.
G'day, Pat. You mentioned earlier you were going to cover a little bit about how you'd go about testing this.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's it. So essentially, right here in this interface, right, I can actually see my the request that I have made. I can see the full thing, and I can go out and debug it, and I can see kind of like the responses that come through. So I didn't go into detail with this, but essentially the ADK web is the interface that you can see. It's a nice interface, right, where we can actually go in and test the logic, experiment a little bit with that, and do that. Now, if I was going to send it into production and deploy it, I have the option to use, well, Agent Engine is probably the best option. And I have written the script to deploy it, but I don't think I want to try it live at this point in time. So yes, you can actually convert it into an API itself that's been run by Google Cloud Run, an Agent Engine on itself, and then consume it like this. But yes, this is literally for development, so you can test the interaction.
Hello, a nice presentation. Just one question for you. How you can combine better the tools and like have a more structured output? Is it possible to have that more efficiently?
So okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper. So the tools that we pass in is things that we want the agent to interact with, right? In this case, it's completely deterministic, right? Because I only use Gemini and prompting. But if you had your own APIs that you were using into your own organization, right, and you had obviously like request and response, you could even create a tool that uses your own custom code in Python and connect it to the ADK, and therefore you would have full control over what it actually does. So it doesn't always have to be, like fully run by an agent, right? From this perspective, so it's completely up to you. Also, I want to remind you a little bit, like the slide when I talked about the different type of agents. We don't even have to have an LLM agent. You could go into completely custom, right? If you're building a workflow that goes through your APIs, great. Write your own logic, write your own code. You're in full control. You've taken the deterministic part out of it. And that is the beauty of ADK, right? It doesn't force you to follow a specific path or a specific tooling or a specific model. It is quite flexible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Good preso. Thanks for sharing the sort of the natural language prompts that you use to create the agent. Looked very sort of clear and well organized and well structured. How did you sort of optimize that to make sure that you were asking or saying the right things?
Yeah, it's a very good question by trial and error. And as you can see, even mine actually failed, right? I wasn't getting back the response straight away. If I switch my screen actually back to my code, and that is the challenge. Oh, it hasn't. Okay, let me start resharing again. Let's go back into the code. Right, you'll see here into my main agent, right? Like I say, what was it? Post handling. When I said when a sub agent completes their task and transfer the task, acknowledge the completion and ask if there's anything else I can help you with. But as you can see, this failed kind of like this step was ignored, so it didn't happen for me. So sometimes we kind of like like have to go a little bit deeper into those instructions and make sure that you don't have anything conflicting. There's quite a few things here, and actually, it was even up until last night, I was tinkering with it, trying to clean it up or extend it. But yeah, there's no silver bullet, especially when it comes to prompting, right? But having said that, there are tools that can help you with this, right? So you can actually have like prompting libraries and testing tools to do that. And I would highly recommend it if you're going to do something in production.
Cool, great, thank you.
Next one.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for the presentation. The question, does ADK support any integration with tracing solution, observability solution?
Does ADK, not ADK itself, right? So for example, actually, let me clarify a little bit. You can probably see the traces here, right? Like in this screen that we were looking at before. So if you are running within Google Cloud and you're using Cloud Run Agent Engine, and you have a cloud login enabled, you get those traces within the cloud login. So you can actually go there and look exactly these requests and response the way we see them right here. But having said that, and something that I do, I guess, like in my work environment, if you're building an app, right? So the ADK is just part of the whole application. You can use your own tracing tool to do that as well, right? So I'm using Phoenix, I guess, at this point in time. I just pump all the output through the SDK into an actual tracing tool, and I can see all the chunks and I can see all the logic that goes through. But having said that, if you do building something simple, you don't have to go further than this.
Thanks.
One last.
Yeah, so Patrick, this is great that we can give the prompt engineering stuff, but then how does it get the right context, like, because at times, like my personal experience when you do the development, when you do the development and then you give some prompts, it not necessarily it gives correct answer,
Yes.
but then how do you scope it? Because you got all these agents, they're working, and just by those instructions, it gives you the result. But obviously, you can refine it later, but
Yes.
at least the content should be like workable. Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, like how do we get a little bit more control, or how do we get a little bit more accuracy, right? Because we talked a little bit, like obviously with Luke about prompting, but also having said that, SDK supports connectivity, as I mentioned, to other tools. So for example, if you had your own MCP servers that had definitions of your APIs and provided context, like you could even have like a rack system that would give information this, you could actually connect that through the ADK to your agent and use it as a base for it to start using instructions. Right? This here is pure prompting. Even the responses from the API are just like literally deterministic, right? As you have seen for this demo. If you're doing something in production, though, again, you're not restricted. No, you can build your own custom one. You can give it any context you want through MCP.
Yeah, and is all this free to be open source, to be like tested?
The entire ADK, the entire ADK is open source. So
Great.
you can actually go in, jump in, customize it,
And do
use
we
it
have
any way
access
you
to
want.
slides later? No, can
But
we?
this content?
Yeah.
If you actually probably good for everyone. If you're have joined the GDG Melbourne Slack channel, I can share information there or ping me there as well.
Cool. Thank you very much, Patrick. A big round of applause.
Thank you.